April 5th, 1531. The London sky, bruised and sullen, pressed down like a physical weight, a vast leaden expanse mirroring the profound and unsettling dread that permeated the very air. This was no ordinary morning. A pervasive, almost suffocating, sense of foreboding hung heavy, drawing a vast, silent congregation to Smithfield. A sprawling, unpaved expanse that typically served as both a bustling nexus of commerce, alive with traders and livestock, and a grim stage for public executions. Yet on this particular morning, the familiar cacophony of market cries and livestock braying was conspicuously absent, replaced by an unnerving, almost reverent quiet, broken only by the distant rhythmic crackle of a furiously stoked blaze, a sound that seemed to chew at the silence. At the very epicenter of this somber tableau, dominating the vast space, stood a monstrous bronze cauldron. Its ancient weathered surface gleamed darkly under the dull light, reflecting the hungry, flickering tongues of flame that licked relentlessly at its base. These dancing reflections cast grotesque, shifting shadows across the assembled faces, contorting them into masks of macabre fascination and thinly veiled terror, a silent testament to the unspeakable spectacle about to unfold. The air itself was a noxious cocktail, the acrid tang of burning wood and the cloying sweetness of boiling water mingled with the sharp, metallic scent of human sweat, the raw earth and the unmistakable, visceral odor of fear that seemed to cling to every breath. Whispers, a collective tide of horrified speculation, morbid curiosity, and burgeoning dread, rippled through the restive throng, each hushed word a fragile ripple in the oppressive, anticipation-laden silence. The only other sound was the insistent, ominous gurgle from within the cauldron, a sound that promised unimaginable agony. A sudden, jarring hush descended as stern-faced royal guards emerged. They half-dragged a man, his limbs secured by rough hemp ropes. His face was ghastly white, eyes wide and unseeing, brimming with terror that pierced the soul. He trembled uncontrollably, not merely from the cold, but from paralyzing, bone-deep dread. This was Richard Roos, a humble cook serving the revered and defiant Bishop John Fisher of Rochester, an ordinary, middle-aged man with hands calloused from years of service. His fate that day would tragically etch his name into history as one of its most brutally victimized figures. As he was roughly propelled forward, an almost sacred silence fell upon the vast crowd, their collective breath held in morbid anticipation. Guards, faces devoid of emotion, hoisted his shivering form with grim efficiency, positioning him directly above the churning, steaming cauldron. A solitary priest, voice a somber murmur, stepped forward, offering last rites and ancient prayers for Roos's tormented soul. Yet, against the overwhelming horror, the sacred words lost their power, dissipating into the heavy air, rendered meaningless by the macabre reality. How could a man of such humble station, a mere cook, be condemned to such an end? What monstrous transgression warranted such a horrific public spectacle? To unravel this grim enigma, we must journey backward weeks, plunging into England's tumultuous, seething heart, a period when the nation's bedrock, its traditions and beliefs, fractured under immense, irresistible pressure. Early 1531, England, convulsed within a maelstrom of intertwined religious and political conflict, threatening to rip society asunder. At its eye was King Henry VIII, a monarch defined by formidable intellect, insatiable ambition, and an unyielding will. His singular desire was to annul his lengthy marriage to Catherine of Aragon, driven by an urgent need to wed the alluring Anne Boleyn. This personal obsession ignited fierce opposition and courtly intrigue, threatening to consume the kingdom. On one side stood the king and his loyalists, eager to forge a new path, a monumental severance from Rome's centuries-old ecclesiastical authority, a break from deeply ingrained traditions. Arrayed against them were conservative clerics and powerful courtiers, steadfast in their unwavering belief that marriage was a sacred, God-ordained sacrament, utterly indissoluble by human decree. Among the most vocal opponents was Bishop John, Vischer of Rochester, a man whose reputation for unshakable faith and scholarly championship of traditional Catholic doctrine was legendary. His piety was unquestionable, his intellect formidable, and his courage against the king, while admirable to many, was an unforgivable offense to others. Bishop Fisher, with his uncompromising stance, quickly became an intractable thorn in Henry's side, a symbol of devout resistance to the king's burgeoning tyrannical ambitions. His steadfast opposition earned him powerful adversaries, particularly within the ascendant and ruthless Boleyn faction, who viewed him as the most formidable impediment to their plans for Anne's ascension. The bishop, profoundly devout yet increasingly plagued by paranoia, lived in perpetual gnawing fear for his life. His Lambeth residence, once a peaceful sanctuary, had become a virtual fortress, bristling with armed guards. He meticulously changed his sleeping chambers nightly and obsessively oversaw food and drink preparation, perpetually wary of poison. The air around him was thick with suspicion, his existence a dangerous tightrope. The fateful day arrived on February 18th, 1531. That afternoon, Bishop Fisher, a man of simple tastes, hosted a modest meal in his fortified residence, a warm, hearty broth. Richard Rose, the trusted cook who had served the bishop faithfully for years, prepared the meal, as always. What the bishop and other diners couldn't have known was that Rose, in a moment of either grave misjudgment or chilling malevolence, had introduced a strange, finely ground powder into the simmering soup. Rose, later under excruciating duress, vehemently and repeatedly claimed his sole intention was a crude, ill-conceived jest. He swore he believed the powder a simple laxative or purgative, a harmless prank, not death. He insisted through screams and sobs he harbored no comprehension of its true, lethal potency. The bishop, perhaps instinctively cautious, consumed only a small portion. However, other less wary guests, including two poor beggars accustomed to leftovers, devoured their servings with eager, unsuspecting appetites. By evening, horrific effects manifested swiftly: excruciating abdominal pains, violent vomiting, cold. Sweats and agonizing seizures racked those who partook. Bishop Fisher remarkably survived, albeit gravely ill and shaken. But the two unfortunate beggars, Bennet Kerwin and Alice Triot, who eagerly consumed the poisoned remnants, were discovered dead the following morning, their bodies grotesquely contorted in agony. News of the heinous poisoning ripped through London like wildfire, igniting widespread panic, moral outrage, and a chilling sense of vulnerability. King Henry VIII, incandescent with fury and profoundly alarmed by the crime's audacious nature, immediately demanded swift, merciless justice. The incident represented not merely a personal affront, but a direct threat to his reign's stability. If a revered bishop could be targeted, who was safe? The very fabric of royal authority felt shaken, drawn to history's darker truths. We promise not to put you in hot water. Subscribe for more grim stories. Within days, Richard Roos, face pale and contorted with terror, was apprehended trying to flee London. Dragged unceremoniously to the grim Tower of London, he was immediately subjected to the infamous rack, a medieval instrument of unspeakable torture designed to stretch and dislocate limbs, inflicting agony beyond endurance. Under the excruciating torment, Rose's will shattered. He broke, screams echoing through the tower's walls, confessing to introducing the mysterious powder. Yet, amidst his agony, he clung to his original plea. It was just a misjudged, catastrophic prank. Even after his harrowing confession, a disturbing ambiguity clung to his words. He insisted, through sobs, he harbored no homicidal intent, merely wishing to inflict minor discomfort. despite fervent protestations, circumstantial evidence, and the king's paranoia strongly suggested sinister, deliberate malice. The poison's sheer lethality defied his claims of a harmless prank. King Henry VIII, a master manipulator of public opinion, eager to assert unchallengeable authority, seized the incident. He personally appeared before Parliament, denouncing Rose's actions, declaring the act egregious, unprecedented high treason, a crime against the crown. He aggressively lobbied for a punishment so extreme, so unique, it would serve as an unforgettable, chilling warning. This wasn't just about justice. It was political theatre and ruthless enforcement of royal will. In an extraordinary, chilling legislative maneuver, King Henry VIII, bypassing customary legal processes, personally authored and pushed through a new statute, Chapter 9 of 22. Henry VIII. This draconian law, a chilling testament to the king's absolute power, retroactively classified poisoning as treason, the prescribed punishment, a fate of unimaginable horror. Death by boiling, a slow, agonizing demise, meticulously designed to mirror and pervert the act of cooking, a grotesque parody of Rose's humble profession. Why such unparalleled brutality? Historians debate the king's motives. Some posit Henry's profound, obsessive fear of poison, which he viewed as the most cowardly, insidious, clandestine form of death, stemmed from his own deep-seated fears of assassination. This personal terror, they argue, led him to seek a punishment as unspeakably ghastly and publicly humiliating as the crime. Others contend shrewd political calculations were primarily at play. A swift, spectacularly horrific public execution could effectively obscure any deeper conspiracy, potentially implicating powerful figures close to the king's inner circle, perhaps even the Boleyn faction. Indeed, insidious whispers swirled that the ambitious Boleyn family secretly orchestrated the affair, hiring Rose to eliminate Bishop Vischer, their formidable obstacle to Anne's throne. The savage public execution, therefore, wasn't just about punishing Rose. It sent an unequivocal, terrifying message. No act of treason, regardless of its scale or hidden orchestrators, would be tolerated. Consequences for defiance would be unimaginably dire, designed to strike terror into subjects' hearts. It was a calculated act of terror, disguised as justice. On that unseasonably cold, somber April day, the expectant crowd at Smithfield swelled immensely, drawn by morbid allure. Vendors hawked stale bread and watered-down ale, transforming the macabre event into a grotesque carnival. The colossal bronze cauldron, scrubbed and gleaming ominously, was already bubbling furiously, thick steam rising like a malevolent cloud, carrying a faint, unsettling scent. Richard Roos was finally brought forth, his body sluggish, eyes glazed, perhaps mercifully sedated with alcohol. He was roughly stripped bare, his trembling, emaciated limbs bound tightly with ropes. Then, with agonizing slowness, he was hoisted directly over the churning, scalding liquid. The rhythmic gurgle of boiling water mocked his fading consciousness. Solitary priest, face etched with sorrow, recited final prayers. He offered fleeting absolution, but no true comfort. As the executioner prepared the first agonizing immersion, the vast crowd collectively held its breath. The first dip, his legs plunging into the hellish liquid, elicited a raw, guttural scream that tore through the square. Flesh blistered, peeled, and dissolved with sickening speed. Some onlookers fainted, others recoiled in horror, overcome with nausea. The second immersion, his torso submerged, produced only grotesque bubbling gurgles as internal blood vessels burst and flesh disintegrated. Astonishingly, Rose remained agonizingly conscious, his screams transforming into frantic, choked noises, a terrifying symphony of pain. The stench of cooked flesh filled the air. Finally, the last plunge. His entire body forcibly immersed, marked the horrific, merciful end. The death was protracted, excruciating beyond words, a truly grotesque spectacle designed to punish, inflict terror, and deter defiance. The image of the boiling cauldron, the screaming man, and the horrified crowd would be seared into London's collective memory for generations. Richard Roos's unspeakable execution was not an isolated incident. In later years, other unfortunates accused of poisoning met similar fates. Most notably Margaret Davies in 1542, boiled alive for alleged murders, her screams echoing Rose's. This barbaric practice, a chilling testament to the era's raw cruelty, persisted as a tool of state terror until reforms under Edward VI sought to curb such extreme excesses. But the true horror of Roos's story lies not merely in his death, but in the surrounding maelstrom of political chaos, religious upheaval, and ruthless power, grabs that defined Henry VIII's reign. Bishop Fisher himself, the man Rose was accused of poisoning, met his own tragic end in 1535, executed for refusing to acknowledge Henry's claim to be supreme head of the Church of England. And Anne Boleyn, Henry's second queen, would follow him to the scaffold a year later in 1536, executed on trumped-up treason charges, accusations now widely believed fabricated, a chilling demonstration of the king's absolute power and paranoia. Henry VIII's tumultuous reign was indelibly marked by relentless brutality, shifting loyalties, treacherous alliances, and a violent transformation of England from a Catholic to a Protestant nation. A country profoundly reshaped not by theological debate, but by calculated violence, pervasive paranoia, and an unquenchable, tyrannical thirst for absolute, unquestioned power. Today, the very ground where Richard Roos met his grisly end is a bustling, vibrant, ordinary part of modern London. It teems with shops, offices, and endless streams of indifferent pedestrians. Few who walk its paved streets are aware that centuries ago, beneath their feet, a man was agonizingly boiled alive, reduced to a cruel, symbolic ingredient in public punishment. His story stands as a stark, chilling reminder of a bygone era, when justice was often indistinguishable from public cruelty, when laws could be rewritten overnight by powerful whims, when fear was a tool of governance. It compels us to reflect on humanity's progress and how fragile, how thin civilization's veneer truly is, always susceptible to the dark currents of fear and unchecked power. The chilling, almost poetic irony of Richard Roos's profession, a simple cook dedicated to preparing sustenance in a cauldron, a symbol of warmth and life, renders his grotesque punishment all the more macabre and unforgettable. The very tools of his trade became instruments of his horrific demise. The man who diligently prepared food in a large pot for others ultimately met his end as a horrific ingredient within one, his body consumed by the same boiling water he once used to nourish. It was a morbidly poetic and utterly terrifying punishment, meticulously designed not only to inflict maximum pain and to punish the individual, but to grotesquely symbolize with chilling precision the era's brutal, uncompromising sense of retribution. His life and his agonizing death became a grim cautionary tale, whispered in hushed tones, a stark warning against defying the crown. 5 centuries later, the faint, disquieting echoes of that grey April day still resonate, a haunting reminder of the delicate, often blurred line separating justice from barbarism. This isn't merely a forgotten historical footnote, it's a profound testament to the depths of human cruelty and the ruthless exercise of power. And perhaps, if we listen with the imagination of history, if we allow ourselves to truly contemplate the horror that unfolded, we can still discern the faint, ghostly screams carried by the unseen wind over modern Smithfield, chilling reminders of a dark, brutal chapter when individual human life was often valued only in terms of its political utility and its capacity to inspire paralyzing fear. The scent of boiling water and burning fear, a phantom odor, still lingers in Smithfield's historical memory, an indelible stain on the fabric of time. It serves as a stark, visceral warning from the past, urging us to never forget the cost when power consumes humanity. Don't let these crucial stories fade. Subscribe to dive deeper into history's most compelling and often horrifying true tales.